Hello and welcome to today's webinar sponsored by Veritone. Today we're doing an ILTA product briefing for all the ILTA members out there, basically around Veritone Illuminate, and we're going to talk about how cost-effectively you can analyze your audio and video text-based evidence before your e-discovery review. My name is Daniel Wong. I'm going to be your host and moderator today. Thank you very much, everybody, for joining us. We have a couple of special guests here from Veritone. Randa Akil, who is our Inside Sales Channel Manager. Welcome.
Hi, Daniel. Thank you.
And we have Joe Fitzgerald, our Solutions Architect. Welcome, Joe.
Welcome. Good morning, Daniel.
Yes. Well, we're going to start today a little bit brief. Talk a little bit about, let's get to the next slide here. We're going to talk a little bit about Veritone before we bring in Randa here. So Veritone is obviously known for developing the world's first operating system for AI. Essentially, Veritone has created this platform such that we can transform and analyze assets, everything from audio and video files, as well as text documents, and turn them into actionable insights. And so essentially, our operating system has APIs that allow you to essentially create native applications for developers to create bespoke applications, again, for folks in the legal space. And today, one of our applications that we're going to be showing out to you guys is called Veritone Illuminate. We also have, as you know, we have a bunch of channel partners here that you guys might have worked with. We work with folks like Epic, Relativity, CDS, and Oasis Discovery as some of our partners. And we have 300 plus employees with our corporate offices based in California, in Costa Mesa. And also we have offices across the United States in Denver, New York City, Washington, and also in London. So without further ado, we're going to bring in Randa here and have her talk a little bit about some of the e-discovery challenges we're seeing right now in the legal space. Randa?
Yeah, so legal teams are experiencing challenges involving audio and video evidence that just keeps growing, and it's difficult for them to sense those large amounts of audio and video data in review platforms, which is incurring high storage costs. Firms are spending countless hours manually reviewing audio and video, which is ineffective and time-consuming. The solution to these challenges is Veritone Illuminate, which is cost-effective. It's essentially an early case assessment tool that allows you to find what's relevant in the cases you're managing, and then allowing you to export that subset of files to your preferred review platform, saving you time and money in the discovery process. Veritone makes audio and video searchable by using artificial intelligence, such as machine transcription, so that you can automatically search and find keywords and phrases that are important to the cases you're managing, instead of having to manually review and listen to large files from beginning to end.
Great. Well, thanks, Randa, for sharing that with us. I know you guys want to see this a live demo, so we're going to bring in Joe Fitzgerald now to talk a little, I'm sorry. We have to talk about benefits before we bring in the demos.
Yeah.
I'm a little bit ahead of myself for early Monday morning. Go ahead.
No worries. Yeah, we're super excited to see the application as well, but I'll go ahead and just quickly mention the benefits. So Veritone Illuminate allows you to ingest, search, and cull audio and video, as well as text-based documents and images and emails to instantly identify prominent concepts for expanded review in any third-party platform. You can also explore concepts via analytics, so text analytics, which highlights people, places, and prominent topics within the data. And not only can you search by keywords against the audio, but you can also search by faces, objects, logos, and more against video footage as well. You can then export the relevant data that you've culled down into any e-discovery platform, such as Relativity, Nuix, OpenText, and more.
Great. All right, so now we're getting to the meat part of this thing. So, Joe, step on in and let's do a demo of Veritone Illuminate here. I'm going to kind of hand you over the mouse here and go at it.
Great. Thank you so much, Daniel. And happy Monday, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm excited to be showing you Veritone Illuminate. I understand some of the folks joining us today probably already have some level of experience with Veritone AIware, which is our proprietary suite of applications that are all built atop an ecosystem of cognitive engines. And so what we're looking at here with Illuminate, I'll just kind of start with a high-level overview. This is the homepage, or the primary spot within the user interface where users will get started. And so all of the data that lives within Illuminate can be organized via a case management structure. So you see me clicking on My Cases in the top left corner here. This is just a way to either divide up all of your data across active cases that you're working on, but it's not restricted to that. You can organize your data across different sources that you obtain it from, really anything that you decide to structure this. It allows you to do that just to kind of keep things organized and neat. So when you're looking to do all the stuff that Randa just mentioned, culling that data down, you already kind of have a starting spot for that.
Now, Joe, just to back up a little bit, this application is a cloud-based application, correct? So meaning all you need is an internet browser to log in wherever you're at. It's not loaded onto your server or onto your personal desktop and so forth, correct?
You are absolutely correct, Daniel. And thanks for highlighting that. As you can see here, I'm just at illuminate.veritone.com. So this is cloud-based software. What you're seeing is our latest and greatest deployment of this application. And for that matter, all of our applications, as long as you have that internet connection, you could go ahead and log in. And so that's what we jumped ahead right here to the login page. We're now navigating throughout Veritone Illuminate. You can see just up in the top right as well, we have a little app switcher here. So some folks might be familiar with some of the other applications in our line, but those connect to Illuminate, integrate with this application, and really provide much of the power behind it. So as Randa had alluded to earlier, data is ingested and then it's processed. That all occurs within one of our building block applications, which is called CMS. So for this little demo account that we're working through here, we went ahead and ingested what you could see in this top dashboard right here. So we have two tabs. We have the Analytics tab, and then we have the Files tab. That's going to be a little bit more of a granular file-by-file look. Think of a document list if you're familiar with Relativity. That's what resides within the Files tab. But the Analytics allow you to get more in touch with your data and understand what it's comprised of. So you can see here, just high level, we have 480 files. They span 96 total media hours. And of those 96 media hours, we have processed, using those cognitive engines that Veritone is built upon, we've processed all 96 of those. And then we could see some additional stats just to break down across which categories of cognition we've went ahead and processed. And I'll talk more about that here shortly, but you could see 96 hours of transcription, an hour of translation, facial detection, and so forth. So this dashboard is really great from just understanding the breakdown of your data and then what processing has already occurred on it. And then beneath that, we have a couple data visualization tools. So this application is still relatively new and constantly being developed and iterated upon by our product and engineering team. We expect to see more data visualization tools as well based off of valuable customer feedback. But just looking at a couple of them here, we have an entity cluster off to the right. Some of us here at Veritone refer to this as the sunburst wheel. And so what this does is it's run entity extraction on all of the data within this organization. And so right now we again are looking at the root folder here of My Cases. So this is all data. But at any point, if I wanted to just segregate it to a certain case or folder, I could certainly do that as well to just narrow the scope of what I'm looking for. But within this here, we have different entities, and the inner ring here are root entities, things like a person, location, an organization, etc. And then if you move to the outside ring, you'd be able to see a breakdown of things that it believes are organizations. You can see Reuters, the Supreme Court, and so forth. If I was to stop at one of these, say the NFL, what I would expect to happen here is that data to be culled down to just the pieces of data that have mention of or inclusion of NFL as an organization. So here I could see that now we've been, this set has been culled down to 4 files. If I was to go ahead and just click on one of these files, I'm going to get a closer look at what this file, makes mention to of the NFL.
So there was an actual mention of the word NFL, correct on that?
That's correct. And I could tell because I see that this source file here is an MP3. And so audio transcription or machine transcription was run on this file. And if I was to take a look through here, I could quickly see that there's reference of the NFL. This is all a time correlated transcript. Veritone's bread and butter are time correlated transcripts.
And what does that mean? So does it mean if you click on it, I hear the audio? Is that what it is?
You bet. So all of this speech that was turned to text was then indexed. So just like in the internet with all text that appears on a web page is indexed so you could search it, we're doing the same thing, but we're doing it for audio and video files. So this really allows you to have more variables by which to get in touch with your data. Because the alternatives to this, of course, would be listening to, in this case, a 26-minute long file and seeing if it's relevant to what you're looking for.
Right. So let's put this in terms of for our ILTA members, right? So this is great for evaluating huge cases. I get a huge case, lots of data. I don't even know where to start. I don't even know what I want to find. Maybe the either the suspect or the defendant's name, or it could be a piece of evidence, right? And I wind up calling things down, and then potentially taking before I send, instead of sending the whole files to a relativity or an open text, I can actually cull this down ahead of time, saving money before, and just only send the relevant documents over, correct?
You bet, Daniel. That is the core value proposition here. You have a vast collection of data, but you want to reduce that to a relevant subsection therein so that you're not oversharing potentially. So not knowing where to begin, I usually break down the Illuminate application's value into 2 areas. You could either not know where to begin, and tools like this help you get in touch with your data, or you could have a very specific need, and then you could find that needle in the haystack by drilling into certain variables. And I'll show you more about those variables here momentarily. I just want to call attention to one of our latest things that we've incorporated in here. And it might be a little small, so I'm going to go ahead and just try to zoom here just a little bit on our word cloud that we've incorporated in. So many folks are probably familiar with what a word cloud is. This is just going to show you trending topics. It's essentially content classification, which is another machine learning algorithm that's run against this data set to try to make sense of what type of data we have on our hands. So it's classifying all the content, and you could see here it falls into these different phrases that appear here. The larger the phrase, the more prevalent that theme is throughout your data. And all of these are clickable. So if I wanted to go ahead and click on, say, politics, I could go ahead and do so. And then I'm expecting the data to be culled down to just that which pertains to politics. In this case, you could see here I'm left with about 7 files. These are going to run the gamut of text, maybe some audio files, phone calls, perhaps it was video if you have any of that as well. So our word cloud feature is really something that we see folks, already sort of incorporating into their daily scan, be it news articles, social media, etc. And we think it's powerful to extend that as well to your data review process.
That's great. Now, Joe, if you go back to the files section, please, I do have a question. And folks, if any of you have a question, as just like I am going through this demo with Joe, we have a little chat box for questions. Feel free to put your questions in there. We'll be getting to that question section at the end of our demo, so that way we can get your questions answered. So Joe, thank you for showing this. So on the files, it looks like you have audio files, you have video files. So what happens with the video file? Do the videos actually show up, like you said, time correlated, just like you saw with the transcripts? Is that what happens?
Yeah, you bet. So video files, we consider video to be another source of data. Mm-hmm. And so that means we can run cognitive processing against that. in just the same fashion. But with video, you have a few more categories by which you could run it across. Obviously, with most videos, there's an audio component. So all those things we spoke of earlier, transcribing it, perhaps translating it once it's been transcribed, that's all possible. But with video files as well, you could analyze what's on the screen. So we have other categories of cognition that we could run against this as well. Things like facial detection, facial recognition, maybe object detection, optical character recognition. So if you wanted to find text, specifically like CNBC in this case, all of that's possible. So this is really, particularly with video and the proliferation of video sources, and hence the data that folks need to go through, there are a lot of different variables by which we could run this cognition against so that we increase the intelligence that we can derive from that data.
That's great. And again, you're using all AI engines to find these things, such as logo and facial detection and object detection and so forth. That's kind of cool. Just out of curiosity, do users get to choose their engines, or are you guys, has Veritone already selected specific engines already for us?
So Veritone, obviously we live and die by our cognitive engines, so we're intimately familiar with them, and we always love to make recommendations to folks by which they can get that insight from their data. But we're an open ecosystem, and we call it an ecosystem because it's living and breathing. These cognitive engines get onboarded. Sometimes they get subtracted if they're no longer that relevant or haven't been maintained. But we have all of these cognitive engines, so users get to decide themselves. If they don't know what they'd like to select, we could certainly make some recommendations based off of all these different categories and what they ultimately need to get from their data.
Got it. So what would you recommend if I were to just decide to buy this and use this now, and I have no idea what engines? Do I contact someone in customer service, or does sales help me? What's that process like?
Yeah, you bet. Well, you got smart folks like Randa and her teammates that are very experienced with talking folks through their needs. So start with, what are you spending the most time doing? And then how could we reduce that and allow machine-aided algorithms to reduce that time spent or devoted to those tasks. So if you're listening to a lot of phone calls and you need them transcribed, or you have a lot of videos, maybe you have surveillance videos as well, and you spend a lot of time either analyzing those to see number of individuals that walk by, whatever the case may be, just start with, where are you spending what seems like too much time? And our answer to that would be, there's probably a cognitive engine or two that could assist you.
So let's just say I have 10,000 files, and there's no way I'm going to get to 10,000 files, and I decide to use Illuminate to help me out. And I find everything I wanted to cull down. Let's just say it's now down to 100 really main files I want. How does that get exported and so forth? Can you show us that?
Absolutely. So the export feature is one of the key value props to this application. We ingested it, we processed it against all these cognitive categories. We found what we need, like you said. Now what, right? And so with Illuminate, we see here, so we're searching through 480 files. Let me just start maybe by doing a quick search to cull this down.
Yep.
So we were just playing around a little bit with that politics example. So if I wanted to search here, I'll do a little wildcard search for the word Democrat. That means any form of the word Democrat, Democrats, Democratic, etc. And right now I'm searching by keyword. So I could go ahead and add that. So, but you could see here, there are going to be a number of other types of cognitive categories by which we could search against, which is, makes things really cool. So if I also wanted to search by a keyword, perhaps there, in case I had any text documents as well with the word, I'll make that a wildcard one as well.
And what does that asterisk mean by you putting that?
Yeah, you bet. So that means I'm holding on to the root of this word, but I don't want to limit myself to just an instance in which the word Democrat in a singular form was said. I want Democrat, maybe Democrats, plural, maybe the adjective Democratic Party per se. So I could go ahead and add that as well. But in this case, I want to cast a wide net. So I'm going to connect these search variables by an or. So let's see if we get any. We saw originally that we had a number of files from just the transcribe word Democrat, but now we're also opening the purview a little bit here because we want to find anything that's potentially relevant. So I often recommend to clients to cast a wide net. It's better to see what's out there and then maybe discard of it, but you don't want to miss anything. And so that's what's key. And so now we have all these different pieces of data, and that's a generic term that we use, but there's going to be a lot of text documents. If I was to click on this one just to see what we have here, it looks to be maybe an article by the Associated Free Press here, obviously talking about some Democratic presidential hopefuls. So, certainly fits the bill here with what we have, in our search bar. And that's really the name of the game. And the thing with this search bar, this multivariate search, is you can save a cognitive search profile. Maybe this is something that a recurring search for you. You could save it. You could then afford others in your organization to be able to search by that one as well. So there's different ways of sort of mix and match across these cognitive categories to be able to cull that data down. But to your question, how do we export? I'm really glad you brought that up because, okay, great. We have this data. It's only the stuff we were looking for. We can then take individual action on a single file like the one we just had, or we could take bulk action. And the bulk action piece is where we're really going to, make some leaps and bounds here. So some of the bulk actions that we could take, we could tag selected items. Might not seem all that important, but maybe in the future we would want to be able to search by just a tag. That's actually one of the categories up here that we see as well. So good ways, again, of segregating your data. But then when you export, presently we allow users to export to a predetermined location, such as an Amazon Web Services S3 bucket, so that they could securely deposit all of this relevant data to a certain location. We're going to continue to expand upon the different export options. But when you do export, you're going to pull down a couple things. You're going to pull down the source data file itself, in this case a text, maybe an email, maybe it was that phone call. But you'll also get with it a JSON file that will allow you to then upload this into your preferred discovery platform, so that these assets that now are attached to it, such as a machine transcript, that would also appear there. So you've essentially enriched your data, and now if you want to leverage another discovery platform, you have the ability to do that there.
So just want to be clear. So if I have a audio file that I just went through Illuminate and I export it out, I'm not only getting the audio file, but I'm also getting the transcript.
You bet.
That's sweet.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what you need to have, honestly, right? Because as you continue to stockpile pieces of data and media, the likelihood that you're going to be able to go back into something dated, remember what it is, and even know that it's there in the first place so that you could look at it, it diminishes over time. But a time correlated or an index transcript essentially adds some permanence to that file so that you can leverage it forever.
Cool. One thing I noticed as you were doing the search bar, it looks like Veritone has a Boolean search there, which is kind of amazing because Boolean allows you now to really do the and or if then, right? So you can really now get down to the needle in the haystack.
You bet. Yeah. As we saw there, the way I like to always tell users, if they're looking for more results, go with or. That really allows you to cast that wide net. But when you start using operators like and, you can really refine and be specific about what you're looking for. You could also group certain selections as well. So, if you want it to just maybe contain a combination of a couple words, but then also or another term, you could do some of that as well. So really some incredible stuff. When you talk about that transcript, if I was, say, looking for perhaps a needle in a haystack file, maybe I need to find a piece of data that's relevant to Morgan Stanley. I remember this phone call, but I don't remember that much about it. Let me at least search for the transcribed words Morgan Stanley. And now I could see that it appears in about 4 files, all appear to be audio files in this case. I could click on this and take a look at this. If I wanted to even go a little bit more in depth, I could connect across to view details of this source media file. And as this loads here, you'll see that we're going to get a transcription of, in this case, a phone call in which a couple gents are going to be talking about, make mention at some point of Morgan Stanley. But you can see here with this transcript that it's also separated by speakers. And that's really important as well because it's going to make things clean. It's much more digestible. And for review purposes, it's a lot more conducive to cruise through and canvas for what you're looking for as opposed to some large sea of text. And again, all of this is time correlated as well.
And is that speaker separation I see there? Which is kind of cool because I haven't seen a lot of things around speaker separation.
Yeah, you bet. It's absolutely speaker separation. And I think, we'll see in the coming months and years that this will be the expectation of anybody with a machine-aided transcription or transcript is that it'll be cleanly kind of delineated by speaker. And so if we wanted to just jump in, we could say, listen to this and then track along. All of the transcripts will go kind of karaoke style, bolding the segments of words that go on. And I'll show you here in a moment how we could edit this transcript as well.
This is Tim.
Hey, Tim. Rick Shapiro.
Hey, Rick.
How are you?
Good.
What's going on in California today?
What's going on? It's hot. It's hot and they don't have enough power. And they kill fish in the Northwest so the people in California can go enjoy themselves at a baseball game.
And then what?
And so you see here, it's doing its best to turn all of that speech to text. There might be some slight inaccuracies, and when there are, the end user always has the ability to edit that transcript. So by clicking on that little pencil, you could go ahead and hop in here and make any corrections that you need to. If you also want to change the speaker assignment, you could do that as well. Maybe bringing in an additional speaker or changing who we think it is.
Right.
So editable transcripts, certainly those that are separated by speaker, really powerful tool and definitely a time saver, especially with just the abundance of phone calls, perhaps interviews as well. Really trying to make sense of that. This platform allows you to do that.
So total game changer. I can totally see how we're now a Veritone Illuminate and AI is really doing a lot of the heavy lifting here. I mean, it looks like, I guess today, if we didn't have this, we'd have thousands of legal clerks probably trying to sift through this, and it would be hours and hours of, it would be great billing time, but nonetheless, it's still thousands of hours. And so I can see this improving workflow efficiencies. I can see this really, again, doing all the heavy lifting, but it sounds like there's still a human still needs to be kind of in the loop to some extent to double check everything's okay. Am I correct on that?
You bet. And we would never encourage an organization to completely pull the human out of the loop at this stage, but we want to give them a healthy head start. And so adding all of these layers of cognition by which they could search against, and then when they come to the review portion of their work, they're way out in front. So it's a huge buyback on time. Could also be, we talked about that export feature. Perhaps you need to redact certain portions of sensitive audio or video for that matter. One of the applications in the Veritone aiWare suite is Veritone Redact, and Illuminate works hand in hand with that. So you could go ahead and send a file over to Redact. In this case, we'll just do it. I don't think the intent of this webinar today was to talk too much about Redact, but it is a constant need that we hear from a lot of users is just, okay, well, I need to get rid of that portion. And so we'd be able to just connect across in this and go ahead and start trying to work on portions of this audio or video file to be able to, just strip out those sensitive words that get spoken, maybe somebody's face as well. So really important piece there. Just want to kind of highlight how redaction is an ever-increasing need and something we want to help out
and
with.
that's a separate application, right? So it's not built in, but it works complementary. So if a user wants to use Redact, they can buy Redact along with Illuminate and then work it hand in hand.
You bet. Exactly right, Daniel.
How does process? I guess we'll talk a little bit about pricing, because I'm sure some of our users are going to want to know. Well, how does pricing typically work with a product like Veritone Illuminate?
Yeah. So we have some of our sales team that would love to hop on the call and listen to the actual need and try to scope out how much data we're talking about. But we do have pricing available, and we've been disseminating that through our different channels. So I know Randa would certainly be able to share some of that information in terms of a license fee on the application, and then also just depending on how much cognition you want to layer in here, going down sort of a breakdown against all of these different categories based off of what a user needs.
Got it. So my understanding is what you're telling me sounds like there's a licensing fee for the seat and then a processing fee for the engines, right? So it sounds like, because you run certain hours of transcription and so forth, right?
Absolutely. Yep. A consumption-based model there.
Got it. Great. Well, hey, this is a great product, Joe. What else? Do you have anything else to show us before we get to our Q&As?
The transcription, the translation piece is certainly something that a lot of folks have a need for. Maybe something that they don't as much. I just want to do, if we were to search by an object in this case, I'm going to try to throw in one that I think I saw earlier. This is the stuff as we talk about video data. And as that continues to proliferate and folks have more and more on their hands, they're going to want some of these advanced methods of cognition run against it as well. So if I'm searching for an object such as a restaurant, I'm going to get a video here. I could preview the video here as with all audio and video files. I could also see the transcript, but perhaps I want to take a closer look at the source media here to see maybe an instance in which a restaurant in this case appeared in this file. So we're going to have our different forms of cognition run against it. We see some transcription. We see, in this case, some object detection that was run on this file. And I'd be able to kind of search through here and click on where a restaurant appeared. And again, this is a time correlated or indexed result so that we would be able to sort of jump ahead in the file to the instance in which a restaurant appears. So at the 1 minute and 14 second mark, I could see that that's what we have here.
I was born with y'all.
So this is kind of cool again. So basically this gives me a high level. So if again, I'm looking for, a particular object, let's just say it is a criminal investigation. I'm looking for a gun. I can find any object that says gun, click on it and confirm if that's the gun I was kind of investigating at or so forth.
You bet. Again, just another method to get more in touch with your data to make sure what you're dealing with is relevant to what you're working on. In much the same fashion, we could search against faces. So if I have trained up a library of faces by which to search against, I'm going to check for one fellow we see here who was a known offender and go ahead and add him as a search criteria. This is now just of the data that was ingested and processed. If any of that media contains the likeness of this individual in which the facial recognition engine has learned, in this case, we only have one file. I might click on that file and take a look. I could go into closer detail with this on our media details page here to see face recognition and the different instances in which this certain individual appeared in this video.
Right. So whether it be a criminal case or a civil case and I have a defendant or plaintiff who I need to train a face that's not on a existing library, I can train a new person. And then if there's a bunch of audio and video files you're going through, whether it be like a CCTV or some incident, whatever, we can then find that person that we just recently trained, whether it be the plaintiff or the defendant. That
You bet. Yeah.
Cool.
So that sort of library of faces, that's just another category of data that we could ingest, train the machine learning algorithms against, so that, again, it could cull your data down to what is relevant to you. And obviously, that's the name of the game with this platform, but it's kind of cool to be able to play around with some of these additional categories of cognition as well.
way cool. Anything else, Joe, before we go into the Q&A?
No, Daniel, that's
Okay.
all I had.
Let's see if we have anything from our audience here. I'm going to take that back, and we're going to get back into our presentation mode here. And let's go to our questions here, see if we have any here. Oh, we got a bunch of them here. So let's look at this first one. Does the app work on all browsers, i.e. Chrome, Edge, Safari, Joe?
Yes, Veritone eyewear does work on all browsers. However, it is optimized in Google Chrome. So we do recommend, when at all possible, to maybe start in Google Chrome when navigating about Veritone eyewear.
Great. Next question we have is, to make sure I understand, are you saying that this tool is for both ESI and audio and video, or is it just for large audio and video collections?
It could be for both. Really what we're talking about here is if you have audio and video, and you want to be able to search through it to discover some insights from it, large or small data sets, maybe stuff that's already been a little bit more structured in terms of the data upon upload, it works in both of those cases.
Great. Here's another question. Is the quote-unquote ID displayed a unique file ID generated by Veritone?
Yes, it is. Great question. So that is a unique numeric ID assigned by Veritone that we just are able to keep track of the processing that occurred on that piece of data.
And then there was a secondary question that followed with that. Will it highlight search hits? Search hits in the viewer?
Yes. At present, we're making sure that that's going to be always the case. So if it didn't appear on a couple of those, realize that is something, a point of feedback that we're hearing frequently from our users. And yes, it will highlight those search terms for where they appeared.
Okay, great. And then another question is, how are multiple languages supported across the various engines?
Great question as well. So we support a number of languages in multiple ways. So when we're talking about converting speech to text, we run multilingual transcription, not only across the languages, but also dialects within those languages. So if your source media is in a certain language, you could transcribe it, and we could get you a full list of those languages as need be. But then once it's been transcribed as well, it can be translated to a number of different languages. So really works in both forms, transcription and translation.
Great. And we have a couple of more questions here before we go. One of them is the ingestion process of all those types of data, if you will. How hard is it, and is there particular formats that you will take and won't take, or do you take all sorts of formats?
Yeah, great question. It all comes down to ingesting, a smooth ingestion process so that processing can run. We support a wide array of file formats and types. We will say that if there is a piece of media that is encoded or has a proprietary codec, that a user do their best to unencode that prior to uploading into the platform. But by and large, all of your common media formats are supported. In terms of how easy it is, we think we've made it pretty easy already, but we're continuing to unblock users from being able to bulk upload. And you could upload from a variety of sources. So we have a whole series of adapters, which their sole purpose is just to look to certain locations, be it SFTP, Dropbox, maybe a YouTube stream, whatever the case may be, so that it knows how to receive that data, make sure it's in a usable format for the rest of the cognition that gets run against it.
Yeah, it sounds like you guys got a lot of that covered, and I take it there's also some kind of customer success person or service person there to walk you through should there be any problems.
Yeah, you bet.
And then the last question is someone asked is, and it'll be our final question, but what is the onboarding process like?
Yeah, so it starts with contacting your sales folk, making sure that the deal is structured to support your needs. And then from there, we're going to start things off with a solid training session so that any end user really feels comfortable leveraging this platform as it was designed to perform. So you mentioned a customer success manager. All of our accounts get assigned a customer success manager. This person is your internal advocate within Veritone. They're going to make sure that you're trained up on the platform, that if you have any special needs, that those are sort of considered. Data privacy, all of that. They'll explain how this platform works. If you run into any problems, there'll be a support line for you as well. And they are kind of your lifeline to the rest of the wider product and engineering or cross-functional teams at Veritone to make sure that you guys are achieving success with Veritone.
Well, that's great, Joe. We're going to let you know that we will be making a recording of this presentation available for you guys for an on-demand replay. We want to thank you, everybody, for attending today's webinar. I want to thank you, Joe. Thank you, Randa, for taking your time here. So on behalf of Joe and Randa and myself, I'm Daniel Wong, your host. Thank you very much for joining us today, and we look forward to talking to you soon. Bye-bye now.